is a game that took many, many years to develop. We'd love to hear a little bit about the process, a little bit about some of the hurdles, some of the triumphs that you had.
Including last year's E3 demo, maybe?
Dude, yeah. All right, well, we can hit all of that. I mean, basically what happens is that people have this like perception that there's like this ivory tower of decision makers at a publisher, and they like, you know, play with the Ouija board or make random decisions and, you know, execute their will. When I think the reality is that in most publishing companies, that's not the way it is. In fact, often it's pretty defunct as a process. It's not very uncommon to not realize, was a decision made in this meeting? Was it not made in this meeting? Like, what's happening? Did you greenlight the game or did you not? Like, there's a lot of like nebulous nature to stuff where guys like a producer comes in to try to really bring a lot of structure to pieces and to say, all right, hey, listen, you know, Mr. Accountable, you need to make a fucking decision about this and we need to move forward because we can't keep wasting time and we need to take structure. So Time Shift started out 4 years ago by Saber Interactive, and these guys are in Russia, St. Petersburg, Russia, and they actually have split development between Russia and New Jersey. So they came into Atari, which at the time, oddly enough, is right across the street from your guys' studio, where I used to work.
Yeah.
And
like
they came
15
in.
feet away.
I'm throwing the game around right here. They came in with this game concept, and it's pretty compelling. You could slow, stop, and reverse the flow of time whenever the fuck you please while you're playing, and that's pretty interesting. I mean, you've seen like time slow in some sort of like John Woo moment with like pigeons in slow motion taking off, right? Or you'd seen like time reverse in Prince of Persia, but honestly, that stuff's more like a oh shit button, right? Like in Prince of Persia, I'm like, oh shit, I fell off this, you know, pillar. Rewind me back so that I avoid that 2-minute level load on a PS2, right? Whereas what we're looking at with Time Shift is you could do that in a first-person shooter while moving forward. So you could reverse time while moving forward. You can slow time and still run at normal speed and use it tactically. So the game started out originally for Xbox One, and we had a fucking tight-looking Xbox One game.
I didn't know that.
Wow.
Yeah.
It must have looked ace
and
on
PC.
Xbox.
And we were talking about PS2 at the time. And so Atari had this whole like management shift kind of thing where they're like, you know, oh wow, you know, this game really looks good on Xbox and Xbox 360s are around the corner and we kind of don't know what we should be doing. So maybe we should see about porting this game. I mean, can the Russians handle that? Well, Saber actually has built their own technology. And so they actually have like mad programmers sitting around in St. Petersburg. And, you know, we approached them and said, hey, what if we start porting it to Xbox 360? And that's really what it was. And I think that you kind of can see that in like the trailer that people just saw. I mean, the graphics look good, but they look like, man, these are kind of like Xbox graphics. And that's the reality of what it is. Versus along the way, we were coming up on the demo, and Atari had pressure at putting out the demo about a year and a half ago. Some people got it on Xbox Live, and I got pretty upset about the whole thing and threw, you know, a little bit of a fit in the office and stuff. So much of so that I went to Russia. And we're working in Russia. By the way, it's a fucking crazy place, man. Like, seriously.
Well, yeah,
we can talk about that in a bit, but there's like some crazy stuff there. And while I was in the office in Russia, I got a phone call from a buddy of mine. He's all, dude, I just saw your game and it looks hot now. This is a lot different than what you had ever talked about. I was like, that's great, but don't you work at Sega? How did you see the game? He's all, oh yeah, some French guy's in here trying to sell it. Sounds like Atari's, you know, like moving some intellectual property out of the way.
They were trying to sell it without telling you.
Dude, I was like,
that's shady.
I'm gonna call you back. So it was like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, something like that. Got off the phone call, flew back to the U.S. and quit. And I was like, I'm not gonna go to another country and really work with these guys and do all this stuff if, you know, our own company doesn't have the back. So I quit and I went to Sierra, and like 2 hours into like them saying, hey, maybe as much as a day into like saying, hey, come on board. They're like, hey, what if we bought your old game away from Atari? And I was like, wow.
Nice. Okay.
So they bought it and they invested a little bit of time in it. We added like Dennis Quaid. I mean, I've done voiceover recorders for this game, voiceover recordings like 3 times. We have 10,000 lines of dialogue to record. 10,000 lines of dialogue 3 different times. That's like taxing.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
They came to September, which was the big moment. And in September, they elected to go ahead and extend the game for a year. And that's where we really had a clean break, because along the way there was always like this 6-month extension thing that would happen, which is kind of, to the perception of a gamer, that's a long time. To the perception of a developer and a producer who's actively involved in the project, that's no time.
Flash in the pan, right?
Yeah, you can't, what are you really gonna do with that? You're gonna add a couple like whiz-bang features, but you're scared to do anything heavy-handed because it could cause too many bugs.
Right.
You're scared to like really get too far into the content because there's too many like consequences with things. So it's not enough. So with a year, which really is short again, we decided to change out the render, completely added shadows and real-time, shadowing and stuff like that, ripped out the physics system. We went from Mekon to Havoc 4.5, changed out the sound engine, made a completely new sound engine, used Fmod, and actually brought some of the guys from Australia to Russia to help put some of those pieces together. Then went in and said, hey, while we're at it, let's rewrite the entire script, redo all the FMVs, re-record everything, do the first 4 levels again, overhaul multiplayers and experience, come in, change out all the main characters as a whole as the entities, go in and remodel every opponent and do it from the ground up, change out all the weapons, the sound effects, and let's get a whole new score of music.
Can I just throw a question out there? How often does that actually happen? Where
Never.
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 Yeah, not only is a company going to buy the game off of another company so you can continue to work on it, but then to allow you the freedom to basically do. I think
it's showing that Sierra's really putting an effort, and by effort you put your money where your mouth is, right? And they're putting their money where their mouth is in moving franchises forward, right? Are they going to conquer the world today? I don't know. Gamers have to be the judge of that. But I think the realistic goal is moving the line forward. And I think that everybody can kind of like with some common sense go, wow, there's got to be an influx of cash from WoW money, right? Which will allow you to reinvest inside the company. And we got some pretty hot stuff going on right now. I mean, that's why I'm there. I'm excited about some of this new stuff. I'm on a new game called Brutal Legend that's, going to hit, one of these days. And I'm excited about working with Tim Schafer on that and really battling through a lot of like, the Persona fronts in that and heavy metal rock and roll. Shit's fucking awesome.
It looks awesome. I mean, just real quickly, I saw the Game Informer feature that they did. I think it was last month. And in terms of like pushing innovation, which is something Tim has always tried to do with some of his other.
Can you talk about what kind of game that's going to be like?
Quite awesome.
Can you talk about what kind of game Brutal Legend's going to be like, or is it
I think
details still
I can summarize essentially what the Game Informer article, which was awesome to work with those guys, establishes that it's a third-person action-adventure game where you are, Eddie Riggs, the main character, and you got a badass axe and a righteous guitar, and it's. The gameplay ensues from that moment. And I think that it's the kind of thing that's really exciting for gamers to say, hey, wow, it seems so obvious that this game should have been made a long time ago.
Exactly.
And yet never was touched on.
Yeah, and for any fans that want to know more about it, I'm sure that Game Informer now has that published on their website, or pick up last month's copy of it.
Yeah, it's on the cover. It's easy to find.
Easy to find.
The one with the righteous cover.
Yes, but it looks great. So I'm not sure where we're going. We kind of left off with the almost
just
started
the establishment
from scratch.
that it never. Yeah, and publishers. The last thing we were talking about, I think, was publishers really never give that chance, and it's a huge risk to take.
And it's probably scary for you guys too, because you're opening all sorts of doors of the unknown at that point, right?
Yeah,
Something else could
it's a
go wrong.
huge risk pill to swallow. I mean, we added a PlayStation 3 version that wasn't a hack on, that we had to actually, PlayStation 3 is difficult to develop for. And to
I
really
would love to learn a little bit more about why it's so difficult.
I think that, Sony lawyers are pretty on top of, what you can or cannot say. I think that the thing that's difficult is that it's not as standard as a concept, right?
It's just learning something so
something new,
complicated
right?
that's so
absolutely.
new.
And with technology that really, pushes the barrier, there's certain risk and reward, and it's kind of high risk, high reward sort of a front. And I think that over time it's going to happen. I remember the initial days of arguing about whether or not PlayStation versus NES was going to take off.
Right.
PlayStation's really difficult to develop for. I don't understand.
Right.
I like this NES stuff. And you saw where that went. And so I would make no comment of console wars or anything like that. But I think it's the kind of thing where you have to invest a lot of time in understanding how it works. You have to understand how can you take advantage of it. And Sony's making some pretty sizable bets. I mean, one of the things that we supported with Timeshift towards the end on PS3 is we actually support the Rumble controller. And the Rumble controller's not even out.
Right.
So if you have one, or if you steal one from a dev studio, like you feel that meaty sort of like weight to the controller again.
I can't wait.
But you never it's so like eludes the gamer that wow, this thing's like feels like Fisher Price, weight now. Like, what's going on here?
Right. Now, I wanted to kind of touch on something that you had said, and it was, gosh, what was it? It's a little bit about the console wars. But you've done some work on PS2 games, and wasn't there sort of the same sort of stigmatism about PS2, and it was, it has a weird architecture as well. Like, did you ever have to deal with that same stuff, like in the early stages of it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's the kind of stuff that I think an end user is probably a little bit more bored with, but you just have to think logically. Logically, one company makes hardware, another company by default has a lineage of making software.
Right.
So one may be more friendly towards software development, and one will be more friendly towards advantages of superior hardware specifications.
Gotcha.
And so you just kind of like have to approach that. And I think that publishers need to help mitigate that risk for developers, right?
Right.
But honestly, the bottom line is that we assume you should have a unified experience between a PlayStation 3 and an Xbox 360, right? Like, that's what reviews are like. Hell, in most cases, reviewers like review one version of your game and just slap the score across all the sides.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we as an industry need to collectively decide what the hell our perspective is. If they're different, then grade them as different, right? I mean, Timeshift's taking hits for that right now. Right now, review scores are coming in anywhere between like a 7 to an 8, depends on who got pissed off that day and really wants to crap on something.
It's so like